Welcome, everyone, to Tim's Vinyl Confessions, this very special episode. I've got a new grouping of people on here. I've either had them on the show or I've done episodes of other people's shows with them, but this first time this particular four has come together. So I'm not sure what order everybody's going to be in, but of course, we've got, Jex Russell from Cinnabros Supreme. Jex is no stranger to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. We've got the one and only Devil's Deke. He's been on once before. Yes, he was on the episode we did with Andy Curran. Thanks for setting that up again, Deke. And for the first time on Tim's Final Confessions, he and I have been on the LeBrain train together before. Ladies and gentlemen, John T. Snow. So all of these gentlemen have their own channels. John Snow has tooloud2oldmusic.com, constantly posting content, reviews. Check his stuff out. Deke's got Arena Rock Thunder Bay. Check out his pages on various social media. And Jack says Cinnabros Supreme. And thanks all of you guys for sitting in with me to talk a little Ratt and roll. We're going to talk about the Ratt catalog. Great, reliable. I call them a reliable hard rock band because Martin Popoff and I did an episode of The Contrarians where we basically came to the conclusion that there are no bad Ratt albums. They've all been pretty consistent through the years. Band with a ton of lineup drama and sometimes two versions of the band on the road at any given time. Supposedly there's going to be a new album. We don't know who's going to be on it, but we're going to talk about what we've got so far for all things Ratt on Tim's Vinyl Confession. So we'll start it off. We'll rewind back to 1983 for the debut Ratt EP. If anybody's got it, let's see what you got. This is actually, I found this one unopened. It's got a special price sticker on it, and I'm sure it was really special because it's also got a chunk taken out of it. But this was originally released on Time Coast Communications. It was picked up by Atlantic, and it is one of my favorite EPs of all time. It is 6 strong tracks out of 6. It's a killer EP. Great way to start off what turned out to be a really consistent career. Deke appears to have some signatures on there. Tell us what you got there.
Sure do. When I picked this actually up back in, believe it or not, the fall of 1984. Now, where I am in Thunder Bay, Duluth, Minnesota is about a 3-hour drive from here, going south into the U.S. And they always got all the big tours, whatnot. All these bands skip Thunder Bay. But anyways, we went down there to see Sammy Hagar headlining on his VOA tour with Crocus opening. And there is a record shop in Duluth called, at the time, it was called Last Place on Earth. And that was the go-to spot for all of us because they had bootlegs and whatnot and stuff. So I went into the shop and lo and behold, back in the fall of 1984 was this record. It was a quick no-brainer. I grabbed it. Now, we all went down there on a bus, and I was just praying to God that when I came out of the concert, that in my seat where I was sitting on the bus, it was still sitting there. And hey, I was with 50 honest Canadians on that bus trip. So, it all worked out. So fast forward to the spring of 2003, and Stephen Piercy and the Ratt Bastards came to Thunder Bay. So me and my good pal T-Bone went to the show, but I left this record in his truck because I thought, I don't want to, I kind of changed my mind. I thought, it doesn't matter, whatever. And when the show ended, T-Bone said, I got to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. So I was waiting for him at the table, finishing up my cold pop. And he came back with that record. He says, go find Percy because you'll kick yourself if you don't meet him. So I did. So I approached him, great guy, and he was pretty blown away that I actually had like the original black and white. Yeah, he said he goes, okay, I'm kind of in the middle of nowhere here. How'd you get that record? So I just basically told him what I told you guys. He thought he was a real cool guy. And so the first thing he asked me, he says, I guess you want me to sign it? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And he goes, you want me to put your name on it? And I said, well, yeah, dude. I said, I'm not going to eBay this thing because I've been holding on to it for already almost 20 years. So John Henry it. So yeah, he did. And he just put, hey, Derek, Ratt and Roll, Stephen Piercy. And I was hoping that eventually maybe on one of these crazy reunion tours that they were doing, they might just touch down here and I could have got the other guys, minus, of course, Robin Crosby, to sign it, but it wasn't meant to be. But Yeah, I agree with you, Timmy. Great, great album, and that's my story, and I'm
Yeah,
sticking to it.
that's awesome. And when Mike and I did our episode on rare CDs, I talked about this. This is one of the rarest CDs in my collection. Um,
Ooh,
this is so hard to find. It's never been reissued. I don't know why it's never been reissued, other than someone owns the rights to it and they won't license it cheap. Like I really don't know how Rock Candy hasn't gotten hold of this, but it deserves it. I had someone once tell me that they figured that this was a counterfeit because I only paid about $30 for it used on Amazon, and I said, well, that could be, but if it's a counterfeit, they fooled me, and it suits me fine. It's great to have digitized or whatever versions of these songs, even though they redid a couple of them, but it's just so cool. Sweet Cheater and You Got It, and it's just so good. So next up, of course, the big one, 1984, Out of the Cellar, and I want to read a little bit from this book, my Joel Whitburn's Billboard Top Rock Tracks. So this covers the Billboard mainstream rock chart from 1981, and this goes all the way through 2008. And what I like about this book is that it shows where the songs ranked on the mainstream rock chart, but if they crossed over to the Hot 100, it shows where they got there too. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this is because Ratt is often called a one-hit wonder, and mainstream-wise, I can see why that is. But they had a lot of songs that got a lot of airplay. So from Out of the Cellar, of course, the big one. Let's get it out of the way. Round and Round. It went all the way to number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100. Pretty heavy song to go to the top, to go to that far, to almost hit the top 10. Went to number 4 on the mainstream rock chart. Back for More, which was one of the songs they redid that was on the EP, got to number 27 on the mainstream rock chart, and Wanted Man got to number 38 on the mainstream rock chart, and surprisingly enough, 87 on the Billboard Hot 100. It's hard to think that there were radio stations that were playing a song that heavy, so it's pretty cool. And of course, get the record out here. I mean, this is a quintessential 80s hard rock album. The late Tawny Katane, who was also on the front cover of the first EP, by the way. Those are her legs. And this, of course, easily identifiable as a Canadian album because it's got the maple leaf up there in the corner.
mine doesn't have that.
And I don't know if this had a lyric sleeve in it. The copy I have just has a plain white sleeve.
Mine just has the Atlantic.
Okay.
So there was
And
nothing in there.
The usual red and green Atlantic label. Of course, this
really,
is
I like the label.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Of course,
So I
this is a
guess it's
Canadian
upside down.
cassette of Out of the Cellar. And like a lot of WEA cassettes of the time, it's not just a cassette. It's a super cassette.
Ooh.
We here in Canada, like WEA albums, for a certain period, they all said that on it for some reason. And of course, got it on CD here, just a U.S. Atlantic pressing of it, and like about 3 million sold, totally deserving of that status. It's a fine album, it's a great album, but like I said, I don't think it stands head and shoulders above any other Ratt album. I think they were just really consistent. They had a cool sound. They were blessed with two completely really good guitar players in Warren DeMartini and the late Robin Crosby. They had complementary styles. Stephen Pearcy, some would say not a vocalist, but a very unique sound. You didn't mistake him for anybody. And, even Bobby Blotzer's drum sound, he kind of had a unique, you kind of know when it's one of his drum performances too. Beau Hill, of course, produced most of these 80s albums. He put his production stamp on it as well. So that's Out of the Cellar. What do you guys, any particular memory stand out about Out of the Cellar?
Well, for me, it was the video on MTV for Round and Round. My grandmother lived with us at the time, and so she knew Uncle Milton Burrell.
Really?
And so, not knew him, but she knew him and sees
who he was.
Right. And
Yeah.
stuff. So I showed her the video and stuff just because we had talked about it. So when I saw him on there, I knew who he was and recognized him and loved all his drag stuff that he'd always done. So that video always stuck out with me. And it was my introduction to the band. I immediately went out, got the, this was 84. So I got a cassette. I didn't get a CD player until I think about a year or so later. But yeah, that was that video was kind of my introduction.
I knew who Milton Berle was because of the Muppets.
The
Actually,
Muppets, yeah.
yeah, he was in the Muppet movie.
That's right.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So
So yeah, I mean, that's how most of us got to know them, right?
Yeah. So I was trying to prepare for this video, and when I take into consideration the 5 albums I did on Atlantic, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to say anything different about each album because, like you said, Tim, they're so consistent, one to the other. Like when I listen to them, I have to listen to all of them back to back almost. Like it's like one long album. So to say something about each, it's so hard. Like it's to the point where there's certain songs when I think of them, I'm like, I have to take a minute and be like, I don't know what album that's on because they're so consistent, and any song could fit on any other album. But that being said, their debut, Out of the Cellar, I really love it. Round and Round, big hit. Wanted Man, You're in Trouble. Lack of Communication, probably one of my favorites on here. And The Scene of the Crime, this kind of one I had forgotten about. But listening to it the other day, I'm like, man, this rocks. This rocks hard. And you're saying how Stephen Pearcy has a unique sound. And when I started hearing Ratt, I heard them in a movie originally when I was a kid, which I'll get to later. But then when I found out it was Ratt, when I hear a song, I knew it was them just by his voice. Like I heard, I forget what, You're in Love on the radio once. I'm like, oh, that's that band. That's Ratt, you know? And then I watched Point Break and I was like, Nobody Rides for Free. I'm like, I know who that is. So it started to be like one of the most identifiable bands for me. So that's kind of like how the history took off. But yeah.
And Jex, that CD you've got, the CD cover had a red square around it. What have you got there?
Yeah, well, this is part of a box set.
Oh, that's from that Atlantic years.
Atlantic one?
Okay.
Yeah.
The original album series, which I got last year. It was just
the original album series.
Yeah, it was just affordable. Like I prefer the safety of jewel cases, and with this here, you don't get the liner notes or anything like that. But at the time, it was just affordable. But eventually, I'd like to get them all separately.
Cool. So, moving on, 1985, they pretty quickly, I mean, an album a year, they were pretty quickly following it up with Invasion of Your Privacy.
Yep.
Not a bad album cover, guys.
Once again, Tawny Katane.
No, it's not.
This is Marianne Gravette.
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't Google her at work.
Yes.
Not safe for work.
She was the 1983 Playmate of the Year?
I believe so, and I think she probably dated Robin Crosby because who didn't, right?
Yeah.
I was misinformed. I thought it was Tawny Katane. Oh.
Now do you have this inside?
No, I don't think so. Okay. Just hang on. My copy, this is an American copy, but sometimes you buy them used and they don't have everything that came with them.
Yeah,
and
so I've got what you just showed.
I certainly do not have that copy.
Yes, this was in the album. It was a flyer to get the Ratt the video.
Cool.
For 1999. And of course, as you can tell, the person who had this album originally did not get the video because there's everything in it.
Or they just bought it when they saw it in the store.
Oh yeah, that could have been too. But I was surprised. This thing looks mint. I mean, they kept it in really great shape.
I've had the pleasure of finding records like that too that were in, obviously the owners had taken good care of them, especially if they still have all the inserts with them. This is just a US CD, Atlantic CD. Another good album, and for the singles, Lay It Down was the only other song they had that hit the top 40. It actually hit 40. It was one of those odd ones where it just, 40 for 1 week, but that's enough to classify it as a top 40 single. Went to number 11 on Billboard Mainstream Rock. You're in Love, 34 Mainstream Rock, and 89 on the Hot 100. Pretty heavy song to get to 89. And another thing about Ratt, lack of communication and Lay It Down all do it. They're in drop D, and not everybody was doing drop D back in the 1980s. That became the thing in the 90s. And I mean, I think Van Halen were doing it on Unchained, and obviously Sabbath were doing it way before then. They were doing drop C, but for more mainstream rock bands to tune their guitars that low didn't always happen. But when it did, it was like the heaviest thing you'd ever heard. Yeah, nice. There's the Canadian cassette, another super cassette.
Yeah.
Don't tell John Snow that. He's going to now want to grapple up all the Canadian Ratt cassette super tape now.
Any John,
I need to
anything
get
on Warner or Geffen or Elektra or Atlantic from like 1982 to 1986, 87?
Yeah.
All these super cassettes.
Okay.
That's and after that, they started to look more like the American ones, except for the address of the label. But yeah, up in here in Canada, we're used to their cassettes looking like that.
You know, Tim, I'll tell you that, you know, when I look back at the whole history of Ratt, I think that for myself, Invasion of Your Privacy is probably my favorite go-to Ratt record. And that just, you know, nostalgia is a huge thing, right? I mean, 1985, I was in grade 12, you know, and right at the time of graduation, Invasion of Your Privacy came out. And, you know, for me, and I know my pal T-Bone and a bunch of other, we were all right into it. I mean, for us, it was just a great continuation from Out of the Cellar right into Invasion of Your Privacy. Almost, I guess you could say, sides 3 and 4 to Out of the Cellar. I mean, the same sound, the same, you know, but they also shifted gears and, you know, they took their foot off the gas pedal and did a couple of slower pace tunes like Closer to the Heart and whatnot. And they kind of were starting to almost branch out a little bit. And I was really surprised that they really never punched those tunes out as singles.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, they put the heavy ones out. But that you bring up a good point. Even the album tracks, the ones that weren't singles, they're like Dangerous but Worth the Risk,
Yeah.
Give It All, Never Use Love. They're all great.
Mhm.
You know, they picked the singles well for the most part, but yeah, they could have gone deeper with some of those album cuts. And I think people forget how big Ratt were. In 1985, on the Invasion of Your Privacy tour, their opening act was Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, wow.
I mean, they went, you know, they were a big band. I mean, like, you know, Out of the Cellar was triple platinum, but the next 3 all went platinum. Like they sold a lot of albums. And I
did.
think people need to be reminded of that.
Yeah,
And that kept going.
Oh, hold on. I would like a quick word. I'm in the same.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'm in the same camp as Deke. This is probably, it's hard to pick a favorite among the 5 Atlantics. Like I said, they're so consistent. But this is probably one of my favorites. I love the album front to back. When I got the box set it was just last June. This was the first one I put on in my car. I was driving home from work, and I was just about to get home, and Between the Eyes came on. Probably my favorite track. And I don't know if you've ever had a moment like this. You're about to pull into your driveway. You're like, no, I'm gonna keep driving for a bit. I want to listen to this. I want to let this song.
Circle the block a couple times. Yeah.
Exactly. I gotta let this play all the way through. It's too good. It was a nice sunny day. Everything was just beautiful. So yeah. So that's all I really have to say. It's probably my favorite. I love this album so much. So yeah.
I know Deke and I have had this conversation before. It's not my favorite.
Oh really?
Yeah, for me, it was when I did the review series years ago, and I was playing them back to back every week, reviewing it. And I was just like, you know, it just sounded so much like the first album that to me, it wasn't as good. Now, great, there are some good songs on here, but I didn't think it was as deep overall. So yeah, because he loves it, Deke loves it, and it's just like I was like, I was a little lukewarm on it. I still bought it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I still pull it out and listen to it. It's just for me, I don't know if it aged as well as Out of the Cellar, but it's still a good album.
There's definitely a mystique about Out of the Cellar. That was the magic moment for them, for sure. Yeah. My favorite.
I mean, Tim, if me and the snowman agreed on everything, we'd be a couple of old boring farts. So
Yeah.
Well, see, that's the thing about these shows. People have to realize, like, sometimes people get bent out of shape when, say, Martin and I do a Contrarians episode on the worst album. It's not the worst album, the least favorite. One of them has to come in last. And, you know, like I said with, you know, on the Whitesnake episode that we did, I had all my Whitesnakes up. I said, look, I'm obviously a fan. I'm here to talk. You can't just blindly say everything's good. That's not healthy.
No.
Right.
Now,
How boring would it be?
Yeah, my personal favorite and the album I argued for my favorite Ratt album on the Contrarians was this bad boy here that came out in 1986, Dancing Undercover. I think this album is every bit the equal of Out of the Cellar in terms of songs that could have gotten big, massive airplay. The only track that charted on this was, of course, Dance. It got to number 36 in mainstream rock and got to 59 on Billboard. So it missed the top 40 by quite a lot. Great tune, maybe a little heavy for the top 40 airways. But then again, we're into the era where bands like Bon Jovi, like Cinderella, Poison, were starting to have hit singles. So I don't know, maybe they were perceived as an old band at this point, which is ridiculous. But Dancing Undercover is just a fine, fine, fine album. I mean, and there's songs on it I think really that should have been singles. Looking for Love is the one. If I were a label exec at Atlantic and I heard that song, I'd be like, there's your first single.
Yeah.
There's your first video. That's the focus track. Put that out and you guys will be fine. And it was fine. They still had a platinum album, but there's undiscovered gems on this album. And another thing I really like about this album is that there's no space between the songs. It just zoom, zoom, zoom. It just goes one from one to the other. What are your thoughts on Dancing Undercover?
For me, they were branching out. And if you look at the cover, it's them. It's not a model. They were trying to be more serious. They went artistic on the back with the woman on the back. So they didn't completely get away from it. But they really stretched their legs, I think, on this one. And they explored. Now, there are no ballads on this one. This is a straight rock record. But the most interesting for me, this was one of the first time I got to see them live.
Nice.
So 1987. And the opening band was Poison.
And
Ratt Poison is the.
I love the fact, the marquee would have, because it's the headlining band first, the marquee literally would have read Ratt Poison. I love that.
Yeah. And it was just a phenomenal show because both of them were just in their prime, just still going at it. But yeah, so I can always say I saw the Ratt Poison tour.
That's awesome. It's funny. I bought this CD used, and I just bought it here in my home province. It's from Germany. I didn't know that till I got it home and started looking at it because it doesn't look all that different, but yeah, great album. Seventh Avenue. Now there were two other singles from this, two other videos anyway, Slip of the Lip and Body Talk. And Jex and I have talked about Body Talk. I think we talked about this on our 1986 episode. And we both heard Body Talk the same place.
Yeah.
Which would have been the Golden Child.
Child.
And Jex, Cinebros Supreme, has the soundtrack.
Yeah, I love that. This is where I discovered Ratt, from this movie when I was like 9 years old. So that got the ball rolling for me.
I saw that movie in the theater, and I remember the song. I think it was the end credits, maybe, or somewhere in there they played it.
No, it takes place pretty much in the middle of the movie. It's in a biker's. There's a biker gang house, and they're watching MTV. They're all hanging out, and Eddie Murphy's kind of spying on them through the window. And then you see on the TV, it's Body Talk video.
Yeah.
So, Jex, just curious, just a little sidebar here. What else is on that soundtrack? I know that Ann Wilson from Heart had a solo song on there, but other than that, what else is on there?
Let me see.
It's not one of those 80s soundtracks you hear about.
No, and I don't listen to it all that often. Let me see here. Yeah, Ann Wilson. Yeah, she's the first song called The Best Man in the World. Melissa Morgan, Deeper Love. Ashford and Simpson, Love Goes On. Martha Davis, Shame on You. A lot of stuff I bought it for Ratt, but to be quite honest with you guys.
Ratt really
Talk.
Off to the side.
Yeah, it closes side one. Yeah, and then Marlon Jackson, Robbie Buchanan, and then a bunch of musical score. But yeah, it's not really memorable to me.
I learned that Marlon Jackson recorded solo. I didn't know that.
The name doesn't ring a bell right now. I'm not quite sure who that is.
Yeah, it's mostly R&B. That's crazy. And then Ratt.
Yeah, I know.
And it's not even on Atlantic. It's on Capitol. So how'd they swing that?
Ratt and B. You know.
Yeah. Wow.
Guys. Dancing Undercover. I always, another great album. And like Tim said, each track just comes slamming at you one after another. Bam, bam, bam. And side two, very strong. Like Tim mentioned, like looking for Love, Seventh Avenue, and there's no taking the foot off the tempo of this record. I mean, it's very good, and it almost reminds me. I like the fact that they went on the production end a little more raw. It almost reminds me of another album that came out a year before that was very raw sounding. It's one of my all-time favorite records, which is Aerosmith's "Done with Mirrors." You know,
Yeah,
we kind of just decided that, you know, probably everything was getting a little too overproduced. Hey,
Oh, no.
A big influence on Ratt too.
big time. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I could spend an hour talking Done with Mirrors, man. But
Great. That's great.
but that, yeah, for sure. Dancing Undercover is, you know, there's nothing wrong with that record. It's just like I said, just balls out front to back and no skips.
It's interesting too because a lot of bands softened up, and Ratt didn't do that.
Oh,
And Deke, you mentioned the production real quick. We got to give credit where credit is due. Beau Hill and Ratt,
yeah.
like that combination, like they butted heads, but it's like the best combination that they could have gotten. Like I think that's the main reason of the consistency that we spoke of was Beau Hill. Like
Didn't he get
I love what
fired after? He got like fired after every album.
Every single album. I read that's an interview that's in Martin Popoff's Big Book of Hair Metal. Great book. But yeah, basically, Beau Hill made so much money because he was hired to produce. They fired him, and Atlantic said, "No, get him back." So they had to hire him all over again. So dysfunctional. Wow. Like, and it's a unique production sound, I think, to the Ratt albums because when you listen to albums that Beau Hill's produced, like, well, maybe Alice Cooper Constrictor sound has a little bit of that in the drum sound, but the Winger albums don't sound like Ratt. Twisted Sister Love is for Suckers doesn't sound like Ratt, and I bet he's produced a ton of others. Of course, they're escaping me right now. Europe Prisoners in Paradise doesn't sound like Ratt. So that combination, it just worked. It worked like, I'm going to say it worked 3.5 times in a row.
Right.
And that brings me to 1988. I actually got a sealed copy of this. Reach for the Sky. Really dumb album cover. I always get the feeling that they were trying, like, you know, to branch out, but they just got this album cover that's supposed to look fancy and mystical and just looks like
very Salvador Dali.
Yeah, but it just kind of flops because it doesn't make any sense. It's not a particularly cool looking album cover. You had a wicker chair and a hand, and
it doesn't do justice to what's on the album.
You know, this would have made a cooler front cover.
Yeah.
If they'd have just, that right there without the song titles on it.
That's
and
nice.
if they'd have colored, you know, maybe colored the logo in again. And I've always liked their logo too, or used that logo. That was new for this.
Oh, wow.
I think they could have made a better album cover. So somehow in 1988, it's the same 5 guys. Somehow this album was actually co-produced by Beau Hill and Mike Stone. You know, the late Mike Stone. I've heard a lot about the issues that his own substance abuse issues. I mean, he's a classic producer, but apparently he started and then Beau Hill had to come in and finish it. So in the end, it doesn't really have the same sound as the previous ones, but still, again, consistently, you know, even at a stage where they weren't doing so well, they still managed a great album. This one's interesting because, you know, any albums on Atlantic Records that came out in 1988, that was the 40th anniversary of Atlantic. And so somewhere on there, they all have this 40th logo.
Oh, yeah, I have that on the Winger debut.
Yeah, Winger. I've got Bad Company, Dangerous Age. Anything that came out at Atlantic in '88 would have that on it. I've always really liked City to City. They've always had really good opening tracks on their albums. The single Way Cool Jr., most successful song from it, only hit. Let me see. It only hit number 75 on the Hot 100. I remember the video got a lot of play. It got to 16 on the mainstream rock chart, but a little bit different, right? Mm-hmm. And a very Aerosmith sounding song. Yeah. It's got that halftime shuffle to it, which I don't think they'd ever done before, but you got to see what a great slide guitar player Warren DeMartini was. I think Warren plays the lead in that. I Want a Woman was another single and video from it. Nothing really caught on. It still went platinum. This is the last time that they went platinum. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they toured that year with Great White and Warrant. And I just think that would have been a great double or triple bill to have seen in 1989 when, you know, Ratt, they hadn't fallen off the cliff. You know, they were probably still pretty good or as good as they ever were live. But then you had Warrant that were brand new and Great White, who was on Twice Shy. Of course, I've never seen Ratt in concert, so I can't speak to how good or bad they were.
Back then, they were
seen the clips in recent years of Stephen Pearcy, but what are your thoughts? What are your guys' thoughts on Reach for the Sky?
I had actually tickets to the Reach for the Sky tour, and it was Ratt, Great White, and Kicks. And the show got canceled due to lack of tickets. And it was like a mind blower, because there you had Ratt with platinum, you had Great White with double platinum, and you had Kicks with platinum, and they couldn't even sell more than 5,000 tickets in Duluth. It was like,
There's another band that Beau Hill produced too, I think.
Yeah.
Kicks.
It was like, man, this sucks.
But you know what I think it is, Deeks? When you have a band that's the headliner and they don't have a big hit single that's all over the radio. I think that had a lot to do with.
And I don't know, have you guys ever read the Stephen Percy autobiography?
No,
I haven't, no.
No, when he talks about this, like he talks about each Ratt record and some more than others. And he talked about this one, and he just said like they were all going 5 separate ways by the time they were trying to cut this album. And case in point, he said like one Crozier basically played the bass on a synthesizer for the whole album, like that. And it's like, when I read that, I was like, oh man.
Yeah,
so, the dysfunction was really setting in, and yeah, it was unfortunate, man. I would have loved to have gotten that tour, but I wasn't paying the band, so yeah, they got axed. But overall, not a bad record. Obviously, Way Cool Jr. is for me the best track on there, because it almost stands above the other songs. And there's some other good ones like Chain Reaction and City to City, but
yeah.
And Tim, for you, to tell us that it only got to 75 on the charts, that's like a head scratcher, man. That should have been at least a top 30, I would think, because when you had everybody else putting out singles similar that probably weren't near as good, going way higher on the charts in the hard rock field.
Sometimes, I don't know, like sometimes for some groups, there are bands like, AC/DC and Aerosmith that just last and last. But some bands have a shelf life in terms of being a chart band. And this was the tail end of Ratt. There's one thing I do remember about when you notice these things happening. I do remember in 1989, there was a store in Maine that I was at that had, it was a clothing store, but for some reason they got in this massive like backlog of shirts that had this on it, and they couldn't get rid of them. Like they were just there for months and months and months and months and months.
Wow.
Now, of course, I wish I'd have bought one.
Yeah.
But for some bands, it's just not their time anymore. And I think that I think what Ratt did right, whether they meant to or not, is stop and then come back later. They didn't try to do a grunge album. They didn't duck and they didn't embarrass themselves by becoming something they weren't. They sat it out and did other things, as we'll get into, I'm sure.
Yeah. I will say real quick though, the album cover aside, I said how Invasion of Privacy is probably my favorite, but this one is tied. Like I like this album very much. Like you said,
Reach for the Sky, really?
Yeah. Well, just I don't know. The way it opens up with City to City.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant album cover.
Oh no! I said album. Sorry, album cover aside. I really like this album.
Right,
is what I meant. But yeah, City to City. Like I love that song so much. So it just sets the stage and sets the mood. And Don't Bite the Hand That Feeds. But also, I Want to Love You Tonight for a slower tempo song. It's so good. That,
and again, it wasn't a single. Why wasn't that a single?
Yeah.
This was the era of the power ballad.
Yeah. No, it's something was going on. I don't know what happened, but yeah, it's really good. It's really good for what it is.
Yeah, it's good.
So a couple years pass, and then in I think towards the later half of 1990, the next Ratt album comes out, and it is Detonator. Much better on the cover art. I do not have this on vinyl. That is very cool, John.
This was hard to find.
Yeah. Now I have, 1990 was sort of like the cutoff. So I know it's possible to find U.S. domestic like copies of it, but wow, that's cool. That is really cool. This was another album, customization on the CD, which is kind of cool. This was an album I do remember within a year of this coming out, seeing it in the cutout bins with the chunk taken out of it, like specific for the cassettes. It went gold, so like even they were at the doorstep of grunge, shall we say, and they still managed a gold album. I think this is the first one where they printed the lyrics. Now, this one is different because they actually worked with Desmond Child on this one. And I didn't know this until I'm going to say within the last 2 or 3 years. I didn't realize that Sir Arthur Payson is Desmond Child. I didn't know that was a pseudonym.
I did not know
Oh,
that.
Yeah, and
yeah,
I
me neither.
don't I don't know where I read that, but I know he co-wrote most of the songs on here.
Yeah.
But yeah, he produced it too. And I will say this, because Desmond Child produced Alice Cooper's Trash, and as you know, I like that album, and it was Alice's big comeback. I don't like the production on it at all. I think the production has aged horribly on Trash. And
Yeah.
but the production on here sounds good. The drums sound a lot better. The drums sound like real drums, whether they are or not. But you know, I don't really hear the Desmond Child. I don't hear the Bon Jovi, Aerosmith, Kiss. I don't hear the stamp on these. This just sounds like a good collection of Ratt songs to me.
This is my favorite out of all of them. This
Yeah.
one's my favorite. And I know it's, it's not their most popular, but I mean,
Again, still managed a gold record at a time when a
did.
lot of these bands were starting. Also, they had one of the coolest logos.
Yep.
Always liked that logo. From this album, they actually had 2 charting songs.
this
Of course,
one,
the first single, Love and Use a Dirty Job. None of these songs hit the Hot 100, and you've got a single. That's awesome.
I found a single. Yeah.
Wow. What's on the B-side of that?
The B-side is What's It Gonna Be?
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is from Reach for the Sky.
Reach for the Sky.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
Love
did
and Use
that
a
a lot,
Dirty
I
Job hit 18 on mainstream rock. Then they had another song which should have been a single or a hit, or maybe it was a single. They should have done a video for it, for Giving Yourself Away. Maybe that one does sport a little bit of the Desmond Child. Actually, that might have been Diane Warren. Maybe that was Diane Warren who co-wrote that. Anyway,
Diane Warren is the
that hit
I have a note
39
on
on the
that.
mainstream rock chart. Look at that.
she did Giving Yourself Away.
Yeah, that I was gonna say that's, but yeah, the song doctors, as it were. But still, a really good, consistent Ratt album. Shame, shame, shame. One Step Away could have been a single. I'm kind of surprised they didn't go with Heads I Win, Tails You Lose, because it's got John Bon
John
Jovi
Bon
on the
Jovi on
background vocals and the chorus, Plain as Day.
Oh, right.
Top Secret's a good one. Scratch That Itch. Yeah, it's a good album. It's a good Ratt album.
Hard Times is a great track as well.
Yeah.
Like it's another Ratt hard driving record for the most part. And, like I can't remember who it was who said it at the top of the show, but Ratt always had good continuity between records. And I think it might've been you, Tim. And it's true. Each record was a good record. It wasn't like, of course, we're going to have some that are more favorites than other, like Jack's. He thinks Reach for the Sky is on level with Invasion, and and that's great. But it's like none of us have so far said, man, that album just right out sucks. Like,
Yeah,
They're-
that's right.
There's
Very
not one.
consistent.
yeah, they are very consistent. So yeah, great stuff.
So then things start to happen. I think that so Robin Crosby leaves. Actually, he goes on to join Contraband, which was a strange. So his Contraband was him, Michael Schenker. Wait now,
Richard Black on vocals.
yeah, from Shark Island.
Bobby
Cher Peterson from Vixen on bass,
and Bobby
and Bobby Blotzer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, was it Robin Crosby or was it Bobby Blotzer?
It was
from Ratt?
Bobby Blotzer.
Okay,
It
so who was the
it
other guitar player?
It was Schenker on guitar and Tracy Guns, I think.
Tracy Guns. That's right. Okay,
Not
so
very
that
good.
that happened, which was just, and I read an interview with on melodicrock.com with Richard. Just lost his name. Richard Black.
Yeah.
Well, because he was the least known person in that band, it didn't do anything for anybody, right? But I think Robin Crosby did leave, and I don't know if he left mid-tour or how that went, but
Was he fired? Or I forget.
It depends on who you talk to. It was the
You know,
Japanese.
depends on
It
who
was
you
the
talk to, the
Japanese
day of the
tour.
week, whether you're talking to management, a band member,
Yeah.
Bo Hill, so
It was
anyway,
the Japanese tour. Is when
yeah,
he
yeah,
left.
that's right.
Okay.
So 1991, so that Contraband record happened. Also, Point Break came out. So I know Jax has some Point Break stories. So let's hear it.
Well, it's not really a story. I mentioned it earlier. Like when I remember watching Point Break, I was like in my late teens, early 2000s, and at that point, I had seen Golden Child, And then when the end credits rolled, and I heard that song, Nobody Rides for Free. I'm like, I know who that is. That's the band from the Golden Child. So that's how my Ratt knowledge kind of started to unfold. And I started looking more into the band and became a fan slowly but surely. But yeah, I remember just watching Point Break, and when the credits rolled, I was like, that's awesome. That's a great way to end the movie and roll the credits.
Yeah, and if you remember the video for Nobody Rides for Free, they're a 4-piece. It's
Yeah.
Warren's the only guitar player. Fortunately,
Right.
they also included that song on this, which came out in the fall of '91. Still, I think one of the best single disc best ofs, which is an episode I'd like to do. Best single disc best ofs that weren't box sets, that weren't 2 CD sets. Ratt and Roll 8191. This eventually went gold, which is pretty cool. Might have even gone platinum by now. I know you can still get this quite easily. This has 19 songs on it. So their songs weren't all that long, and they put 19 songs on a CD. And I can't complain much with what they actually put a couple songs on here from the EP, which is awesome. They included Nobody Rides for Free. It's clear, I think, that Atlantic was still trying to promote Detonator, because there's five songs from that album on here, but there's at least 2 from every album, and it flows together so well.
Yeah, this is for the longest time. This is all I had from Ratt. I had a few of their cassettes, but I didn't have a working tape deck, so I listened to this over and over. And this was my knowledge of Ratt for the longest time.
It's got a decent write up in here, and yeah, this is still available. It's this one, Detonator's hard to find on vinyl. This one's even harder.
That one's even harder.
You can if you're going to pay for it if you buy it. You can find it, but you're going to pay. I got it on cassette too. But yeah, this is, some best ofs are very poorly done. There are key tracks missing. But this is, if somebody said, I want to go buy something by Ratt, I'm like, go to your Sunrise Records, find this in the $5 bin. As a matter of fact, you can use,
Yeah, it's always there. Sunrise.
It's always there. You can actually, if it's 2 for $10, you can get this and out of the cellar, get a good start on your Ratt collection. And if you like this, here's the thing. You'll like the rest of the catalog. Yeah. And so that was it for that particular period. The next thing I believe to come out was Stephen Piercy, along with Fred Coury from Cinderella, formed Arcade. And I don't know if any of the other guys in that band came from anywhere in particular. I know that the big names were Stephen and Fred. So I see John and Jex have held it up. I used to have that CD. I remember Nothing to Lose was a good song, and it did get a little tiny bit of airplay. But yeah, tell us, you guys have the Arcade CD, and I think they had a couple. Tell us about Arcade.
You go ahead, John.
I was about to say, I just found this not too long ago. I've never had it before. So this is one I'm learning to like. So I don't really know enough about it yet, but I do. I mean, I don't think it's, you can tell it's Stephen or Piercy on it. So that's all I cared about.
Well, I have like the same story. I found it last summer, and so I haven't listened to it all that much yet, but I do like from what I heard. And it's hard not to compare it to Ratt because of that signature vocalist, Stephen
for
Piercy.
sure. Yeah.
It's not that they sound like Ratt, it's just you hear his voice and you think, oh, Ratt. But they do their own thing. And yeah, I look forward to visiting it again because it was a good album.
I will say that I bought that when it came out, and I still have it on CD. And I know that when I do these episodes with you guys, especially the Snowman, I mean, he's going to dig through his whole collection. So I just got lazy and didn't pull my stuff out because I know he'll cover me.
Yeah, I'm done with my show and tell, though. That's it.
Yeah, but you know what? I have to say that's one of my favorite Piercy albums. I mean, he did a bunch of co-writes with Jim Vallance. I mean, you spin back to the time of 1993 when it came out, like kudos to Fred and Stephen. Like they got a record deal in the midst of grunge.
Yeah, they did 2 albums on Epic. I mean,
when a lot of bands were losing their deals, they got a deal. And, those first 3 tracks on there, Dancing with the Angels, Nothing to Lose, and Calm Before the Storm, man, like they just, as soon as I heard those first 3 songs, I was just like, hooked in. And
surprisingly enough, I'm just looking this up in Billboard on the mainstream rock chart. They actually charted 2 songs. So Nothing to Lose got to number 29, and the ballad Cry No More got to 27. That's impressive
It's
That's very impressive.
yeah,
1990.
it's solid. I think
93.
Jackson the Snowman, when they dig into it, I think you guys will like what you hear.
Oh,
You know?
definitely.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, the opening track, "Dancing with the Angels," that just totally reminds me of going back to Aerosmith Downward Mirrors. It just reminds me of it's got that tempo of let the music do the talking. You know, the slide guitar, the pounding drums, and the sleazy vocal. I mean, it's very good. So
Right.
It might have done better if it had the Ratt name on it, right?
yeah,
So the next thing I've got came out in 1997. So Ratt had reunited with it wasn't Juan Crochet on bass. It was Robbie Crane,
Robbie
who had
Crane.
played with Vince Neil. He just been kind of floating around in that scene. I'm trying to think who else did Robin come back at this point, or were they just a 4-piece still?
I think they were. I think it was a 4-piece. If we're
Yeah.
talking collage,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
then
they
I think
came
it's
back, they went on tour, and then they put this, I think, a pretty good collection of leftover songs called Collage. The version I have is probably the only D-Rock Records, which I guess ripped off a bunch of these artists. They put out a bunch of albums around this time. They put out Helix Half Alive, Y&T Endangered Species. They put out a ton of tribute albums with a rotating cast of the same players, some of which are pretty good, like the AC/DC Thunderbolt one, I think is pretty good. But anyway, this is a really consistently good listen. Steel River, cool song from their earliest days. Dr. Rock, that one goes back. There's a couple of songs that have appeared elsewhere. Top Secret, it's a little different version than the version that's on Detonator. I believe the song I Want It All eventually turned into All or Nothing from Detonator. And there's an acoustic song on here called Mother Blues, which appeared on the first Arcade album. So obviously, and then to me, the useless, Love and Use a Dirty Job phonic mix. I don't even.
I'm glad you said that, because that's like the worst.
Yeah, I usually just skip. I always skip that.
Yeah.
Rat Madness is a cool fast one. They would do some really fast ones. Like if you go back through their career, they throw a fast one at you once in a while. Not quite thrash, but old school, what they would call over the top, like Sweet Cheater and, ones like that. Rat Madness is right up there. Hold Tight's a cool song. Diamond Time Again. This is a good collection of songs. And they didn't really, I don't think the color scheme, because there's a cool collage in here, not unlike Motley's Decade of Decadence. But you can't really make much of it out. But there's magazine clippings and photos and stuff like that. But, I was glad that they were back. I guess I realized I'd missed them. And, anyone else got anything to say about this collage release?
I got to find that one. I'm not familiar with it. I never heard it. I don't have anything outside the Atlantic album, so I'd really like to track it down. It doesn't pop up often in the wild. I never see it.
No. It's
That's
hard
the
to
trouble
find.
with these little labels that put things out, right?
Yeah.
I think you summed it up best, Tim. It's a pretty good collection. I actually have that one on CD as well, and agree with you. There was no need to put Love and Use a Dirty Job phonic mix on there. That was just a waste of space.
It was, because everything else is so, they're like demos or just old versions, and it kind of, that fits that whole theme going.
They're not bad sounding though. Like they cleaned the sound. They cleaned them up pretty good.
And Diamond Time Again, I think, is probably my favorite track on there. It's along with Steel River. I mean, I was like, wow, man, they sat on these tunes.
Yeah,
pretty good songs to be sitting on.
It says a lot about the consistency of a band, like we've said, and a consistency of their songwriting when their quote unquote throwaway tracks are as good as anything that they release. And to my knowledge, these weren't a bunch of guys that overwrote, and they didn't have B-sides. They didn't have non-LP B-sides that I know of. So basically they wrote what went on an album, but then there were these, probably songs that some of them went back to their days as Mickey Ratt, when they were, before they shortened the name.
Three of them are for Mickey Ratt.
Yeah.
Steel River, Dr. Rock, and Rat Madness.
Yeah. It's good stuff. So towards the end of the 90s, something cool happened. Unfortunately, not much came of it, but I remember thinking it was maybe a light at the end of the tunnel for someone that wasn't big on 90s rock. John Kalodner from Geffen Records, resurrected the Portrait label, which was a CBS and now Sony label. Hart recorded for Portrait, Aldo Nova, Accept, Cyndi Lauper. I mean, it was a label that existed in the late 70s, early 80s that kind of went dormant. He resurrected the name and the logo, and he started putting together bands from the 80s that were, considered passé. So Great Whites, Can't Get There From Here, good album. That came out on Portrait. Cinderella were apparently recorded an album and it got shelved, and I'd love to hear it. I think that some of those songs ended up on Tom Kiefer's first solo album. Damn Yankees apparently recorded an album for Portrait, and they themselves didn't like it. So there's a third Damn Yankees album floating around there somewhere. I think some of the songs ended up on a Nugent album. Some of them ended up on a Styx album. I think some of them might have ended up on a Night Ranger album. I don't know. But one of them was also Ratt, and they put this self-titled album out. I don't really care much for the cover art. I don't see how this was supposed to draw new fans in. They could have given the album a title. But they, for the first time in, almost a decade, they had a major label again. Again, just a 4-piece. And actually, the opening track, Over the Edge, did hit the mainstream rock chart. That's what a major label will do. Got to number 39. And this, I'm going to say it, I like it, but it's probably my least favorite Ratt album. That doesn't mean it's bad, but I remember thinking, I can't see this clicking. I just can't. Even though, not just the fact that this style of music isn't popular anymore, I just don't think this had the right songs to carry them, to keep going as a major label band. I don't know. What do you guys think about this self-titled album?
I would agree with you on all of that. I do love Over the Edge.
Me too.
It's a great opening track. It's got like an STP guitar sound to it.
A little bit, yeah.
So it's very modern. And then the only other songs I really liked, I like Dead Reckoning and Lovesick, I think is just a sick song. It's
Lovesick is quintessential. It's classic Ratt.
Yeah.
They co-wrote some songs like Live for Today and stuff. They co-wrote with Jack Blades. Now I'm a huge fan of Night Ranger, so I've got no problem at all with Jack Blades. Doesn't fit Ratt.
Right.
Don't make Stephen Pearcy sing pretty. Don't try to make him sing pretty melodies. It's not going to work. You can just sing good old sleazy hard rock and roll, and then you've got something. But yeah, Over the Edge, it was good. It was modern sounding without making me want to throw up. And a lot of these songs, man, I just can't. The last song, So Good, So Fine, is kind of a fast one, but I don't even remember how a lot of these go until I listen to them again. I just remember being a little underwhelmed, but still, even at that stage, it sounds like Ratt. So even at that point, they didn't turn in an un-Ratt sounding album. I don't think they're capable of it.
All I'm going to say is that I'm not very familiar with the stuff outside of Atlantic. Like I mentioned, I never did find those other albums. But this week in preparation, I decided to listen to a little bit. I didn't have much time, but I listened to the first 2 or 3 tracks of this one, and I like what I heard so far. Like it's for me,
it's not bad. It's not bad.
No, for sure. You can tell it's Ratt. Obviously, you got the Stephen Pearcy vocals, but for me, what stood out the most, especially, were the Aerosmith inspirations. I mean, we've mentioned that a few times in this video so far, but from what I heard, I could really hear a lot of Aerosmith's sound. And which I dig. So I look forward to listening to it in further detail. And to contradict what you said, Tim, I think the album cover is cool looking. I'm a comic book graphic novel fanatic, so I like that look. I don't know, it's got that mysterious animation. I think it looks cool. Yellow's my favorite color. Maybe that has something to do with it, but I think it looks good. But yes, I do agree they could have given the album a name, because now you have the Ratt self-titled EP and you have the Ratt self-titled. So.
Yeah, I think there's an alternate cover of this if you've got it in another country too, and I don't know if it was. I don't know if it was this.
Yeah, see.
Oh, okay. I think I've seen that one before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's not. It's interesting. I can see that they were trying something different. I just think it's. I don't know. And there is, there's a little bit of the rebranding going on. Like Metallica with the Black Album. Let's not give it a title. Maybe that was it too, but this is the last album that I found in a store new, because it had the Sony distribution on it, right? I have no idea how well this sold. It didn't certify. So, and that was it for Ratt recordings for a long, long time. Like, does anyone else have any of the side projects that Steven did? Because I know he had Vertex and Vicious Delight and all these different things. Does anyone speak to that stuff?
No, but Tim, just to go back to the '97 record, I mean, Jack's kind of hit the nail on the head there with Ratt calling that one self-titled, and the debut EP being self-titled as well. It almost like bookends their recording career.
Yeah.
Like all. And I agree with what John says about the '97 record. Totally 100%. Like, he banged out the 3 songs that I like. I also like Jack's perspective on not hearing that record until now. It's kind of neat to hear a 2022 perspective on hearing it, because it's probably been about since 1997 I've actually heard that record. So, good stuff.
So I know that there were various versions of Ratt out on the road. I know at one point they had Jizzy Pearl from Love Hate on vocals, which actually kind of makes sense because he's got a raspy voice.
Yeah, true.
But so in 2010, I was very happy, not just that they got back together, that they put out a good album. This came out, Infestation, on Roadrunner Records, which by this time, Roadrunner started out as like a thrash label, but they ended up being a pretty big mainstream label. And 2010, this came out, reunited band with Juan Cruce on bass, who, speaking of, doing the bass parts on synthesizer on Reach for the Sky, that's really sad, because if you listen to those earlier Ratt songs, he was actually a really good bass player, and he didn't just do the one note thing. So that's kind of that's totally phoning it in. This album,
of course, that's coming from Steven's perspective too. I mean,
yes,
those guys were all coked up to the sky, so no pun intended, to reach to the sky, but
it might not. Things might not be remembered quite so well.
Yeah.
So by this time, they do realize that Ratt works best as a 2-guitar band, and since Robin Crosby sadly passed away in 2002 after years of self-abuse, I think they did the next best thing. They got Carlos Cavazo from Quiet Riot, and it was a strong lineup, and they put out a really strong album, and it's called Infestation for a reason. They wrote this as if they were following up Out of the Cellar, and this was the very next album. The copy I have also came with this Roadrunner order form thing in it. Thoughts on Infestation? Those of you that have heard it, what do you think of it?
I mean, it was Ratt. I mean, it was what we've been wanting for years to hear, is those guys together again. It does pick up. It's Out of the Cellar, Invasion of Your Privacy. It's right there with them.
I mean, if that's the album they'd put out in '99 with the Sony deal, things might have been different.
Yeah,
things might have been different. They might have picked up a big tour. Who knows? Probably not. But that's a better album. Like, this is the self-titled album's decent.
Mm-hmm.
This is a good, consistent Ratt album that would have fit right in along there. They did an album a year for a while. If that album had come out in 1987. In between Dancing Undercover and Reach for the Sky, wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. No, I mean,
and I've also,
it's great. Do you?
Oh, wow.
Now my good buddy Matt Phillips found this for me. It's a reprint, so I think it's kind of counterfeitish.
Okay,
this is not an original Roadrunner, because an original Roadrunner pressing of this will set you back, I don't know, thousands, crazy amounts.
That much? Wow.
Yeah, well, it only came out once, right? But
right.
I'm perfectly okay with this copy, and I also like the fact that it's just on one record, because it doesn't need to be on 2, but sometimes they put them on 2. It's Eat Me Up Alive, good opener. Best of Me was a video single. You just read the song titles, Take a Big Bite, As Good as It Gets. They sound like Ratt songs, too. Like, they just sound like Ratt song titles, and unfortunately, that's 12 years. And there's been lots of drama and lots of changes since then. But, if that's the last thing that Ratt put out, then they ended on a high note. And I think they gave the fans that proper Ratt album that they were looking for. And John got something out that I don't recognize.
Well, this was later. It's his solo album.
Right.
Yeah. So I was once you got to that, I was like, oh, I forgot I have this on vinyl.
So talk to us about that for a while. When did that come out? It's called Smash.
Smash. What year? This was 2017. His solo album. Because he did this one, and then he did the next one that kind of had the James Bond looking cover on it.
Yes.
But to me, this is quintessential Ratt. I mean, it's sounds like a Ratt album. The songs on it are great. I have no complaints with this one. It's I Know I'm Crazy. That's the one, like you were saying, their opening tracks are always great.
Yeah.
And what I loved about the early albums is even the mid song, because you know vinyl and cassettes were still the key. Side B opening track always stellar.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, and this is very nice. It's got a gatefold. It's
Yeah.
one album only.
Yeah.
So got to go this way with it.
It's pretty hard for Stephen to do anything and have it not sound like Ratt. He's got such a distinctive
It's
voice.
too distinct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he was the main songwriter as well.
Yeah. Yep. And you
Yeah,
know,
no, this one I think I would recommend this with any Ratt album.
Yeah, it's very good.
and the other thing about you know, if Stephen was the main lyricist too, their lyrics were, I think, a little cut above a lot of their peers. They weren't. Some of them were, but they weren't typical. Like he had a way of phrasing things that was just a little bit out of the norm, I think. Some people may laugh at that if they're not into this genre of music or they lump it all together. But no, Ratt were just a little bit smarter. They were definitely smarter in their guitar arrangements. Very intricate. Again, that's that Aerosmith. It's that interweaving of the guitar parts. You know, I think that they were probably the heir apparent, you know, to the Aerosmith throne, as it were, but much more consistent because they didn't do the sickening power ballad route or, you know, disappear up their own self-importance or whatever. And who knows? I mean, they're one of those bands that I just wish we had more music to talk about from them, you know, because they were just a good sound. I like that sound. I'd like to hear more versions of that sound. But so, you know, as of now, that's the only Ratt really there is to talk about. I don't think we're missing anything. I mean, I know there's compilations and things that I don't have, but I don't think there's songs out there floating,
And
unless it's like reissues of the earlier, like the pre-EP stuff.
no, they've never done a live album, have they?
They haven't, and I wonder if it's hard to find good live recordings. I don't know.
I mean, that's
You know,
gotta be
because
my
Motley
guess.
Crue never did a live album back in the day either. The Entertainment or Death was reissue of an older show. So I don't know. But so guys, thank you very much for helping me talk some Ratt and Roll. It's a lot of fun going through this catalog. It makes me want to listen to it all again. And follow each of these guys. I'm going to post links to their stuff underneath this video. And don't forget, my Unspooled book is still on sale. John's nice enough to have his displayed in the back there, and all you guys have bought it, and I appreciate that. And believe it or not, Ratt have 8 tracks. There are 8 tracks for the EP, An Invasion of Your Privacy. Note, not Out of the Cellar, even though that came out in between. That's one of the great 8-track mysteries. At least it hasn't surfaced yet.
Okay.
And no, I don't have either of them. They're very, very rare. You can look them
I'm
up on
always looking.
look them up on Discogs. They're mind-blowing to see Ratt 8 tracks. But anyway, so thanks everyone very much for watching this edition of Tim's Final Confessions, and we'll see you later. Go listen to some Ratt.